No.
Hello, welcome to the Low Carbon City Forum TV. Today we have our hangout called the Breathable City, dealing with air pollution to improve urban health. And we have three distinguished guests with us. We are joined today by Jenny Bates. She's a campaigner for Friends of the Earth in London. We're also joined by Kristie Daniel. She's the director of the Livable Cities program of HealthBridge Foundation of Canada. And we are joined by Dario Hidalgo, transport specialist from the World Resource Institute. Hello, all of you, and we are very happy that you join us. We have kind of a four location or five location hangout today. I'm here welcoming you from the Venice Biennale, from the Austrian Pavilion, which has a very nice garden that you can see here. Because we are here at the Biennale to check out what sort of architecture and urbanism will actually support our quest for building a low-carbon city, and which strategies we might want to share globally. And also air pollution has been represented in some of the projects that are exhibited at the Biennale, so it's very interesting. And we also have Jenny coming in from London, Kristie is calling from Toronto, and Dario, I suppose you are in Bogota?
Yes, I am in Bogota.
Okay, and we also have Juan Manuel hosting us from Hong Kong. So it's, again, a global conversation on the Low Carbon City Forum TV. So to follow all the live tweeting also, all of you can use the hashtag LCCFTV, and you can also follow, of course, our social media channels on Twitter and on Facebook, and then also find the documentation of the hangout on our website, www.lowcarbon.city. So welcome. The topic of today is dealing with air pollution to improve urban health. It's quite an important issue and very prevailing all around the globe, actually, in different situations, in different environments. In some we really have serious health problems. We'll come to that later. And in some other areas it's more about urban livability, but the quest is the same, that we basically want to reduce air pollution. And we, as a Low Carbon City Forum, we are very interested because dealing with air quality or dealing with air pollution automatically also goes in hand with a general reduction in carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. So it's also a way to kind of lobby and advocate for two things at the same time. So improving urban livability, but at the same time dealing with climate change. So I would ask you three to give a brief introduction of who you are and your organization where you work at, so that our viewers and live listeners can understand who is involved in the discussion. I would suggest to go from Venice to London, and then to Toronto, and then to Bogota. So Jenny first, please.
Hello everyone. Fantastic to be here. So I work for Friends of the Earth in London, which is the United Kingdom branch of an international organisation. We have many branches around the world. So I started working as the London campaigner, but because air pollution is so bad in London, I started doing work on air pollution, and I got us to sign up to a big coalition of health and environment and transport NGOs, did some work with our local groups, which are voluntary, and now the organisation is working up a proper campaign about clean air, so that's really exciting.
Okay, thank you very much. So Kristie, next to Toronto, please.
So I'm Kristie Daniel, and I am the director of the Livable Cities program for HealthBridge. The Livable Cities program works in low and middle income countries, and right now we're predominantly in Asia and Africa. And we work on issues about how to create cities that are healthy, that are happy places, that are good for the environment. And so we have a number of different programs that we work on related to that, and I'm sure we'll get into that later in the session. So I'm here from Toronto today, but my path usually takes me to Asia and Africa quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
I am Dario Hidalgo. I work with the World Resources Institute. We have a Center for Sustainable Cities funded by Ross, and we have activity all over the world, particularly in Mexico, in Brazil, in Turkey, in China, in India, in Indonesia. And I work with this team from Bogota, Colombia, and we are very interested in these issues of air quality as part of sustainable development of cities.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we can directly jump into why should we actually care about air pollution or air quality. Can you describe, I think maybe Jenny can give it a shot, like what is the real problem about air pollution?
Well, it's a huge health hazard. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It really affects people, but it's also has effects on ecosystems and, as you say, on the climate. But in the UK alone, on health, it's responsible for about 40,000 premature deaths a year, making it second only to smoking, which is obviously terrible. And it also affects some of the most vulnerable, the hardest, like the young, the elderly, most disadvantaged who live near the main roads. And also, it affects all people on the roads. It also affects people in vehicles, and they don't often realise that. In the UK, we're failing. We've got EU limits, and the UK is failing for nitrogen dioxide, even though we should have met those years ago. And even on PM10s, so EU limits have been met in the UK. There are many places still which are failing on World Health Organization levels.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the concrete health hazards that people can get directly from air pollution? When we talk about urban health, and what we will also do with this hangout, that we will see how can we make people or more people aware of the problem. Maybe that's a question for Kristie. What are some of the specific problems what are increased by bad air quality?
Sure.
When I can tell, yeah.
No, go ahead, finish.
No, I because I wanted to say, if I want to tell my uncle or my grandmother about air quality, and they don't say like, yeah, but what is the problem actually? But what can I tell them? What is the real problem here?
So HealthBridge, as a health organization, one of our main areas of focus for health is on reducing the risk for non-communicable diseases. So poor air quality contributes and is a risk factor for non-communicable diseases, but it also makes people who have non-communicable diseases right now, it makes their situation worse. So it actually exacerbates existing chronic disease. So, and if you think about it, that makes sense. If you are somebody that has a heart condition and you need oxygen in order to get to your heart, and your heart's having a hard time getting the oxygen to the parts of the body, if there's high levels of pollution, that means the levels of oxygen are actually quite poor, and your body's going to have to work a lot harder to get that oxygen to the different parts of the body. And so poor air quality actually then contributes to not only the incidence of chronic diseases, but it also makes the existing chronic diseases worse. And chronic diseases are the #1 killer globally, so it's no longer communicable diseases in low and middle income countries, but chronic diseases has taken over as the #1 killers in every continent except for Africa, and by 2020 that will happen in Africa as well. So it's a major problem, and just to give you, if you want some numbers, 7.4 million deaths related to heart disease every year globally, 6.7 million deaths for stroke. Lung diseases, they account for 6.2 million deaths globally, so it's a huge, huge problem.
Okay. When you talk about deaths, Kristie, and also Jenny said it before, I think it's important to clarify something, that most of these estimates are premature deaths, right? So maybe can you answer that, Dario? How can we understand the concept of a premature death, and what does it involve in terms of time?
Yes, this is.
Are you still here? Are you
Means
still with us, Dario?
yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, you were just frozen. That's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, well, we have premature death. We have a life expectancy at birth, and premature death means dying before you are expected to die by natural causes. Given the advances in medicine, people is dying beyond 70 in most countries in the world. There are some countries that still are not reaching that level. But bad air is killing people before that time, especially very young children of respiratory disease, and also some elderly people before they reach the natural time for completing the life. So just in Delhi, just to give some facts, the Center for Science and the Environment estimates that 10 to 30,000 people in just city die prematurely as a result of bad air quality. This is a huge problem in many developing cities. You see Beijing, you see Mexico City, my own city, Bogota, Santiago in Chile, and many other places that have some special conditions in the geography where bad air is concentrated, causes a lot of harm and disease and premature death.
I would just say, Florian, that I think there's also the concept of attributable premature death. So air pollution probably affects larger number of people, but it's a way of assessing how many people they think have actually died prematurely because of the air pollution. Although more people would be affected overall in some way, but then they work out how many they think you could actually count it as pollution. I would also say that lung cancer is another thing. The World Health Organization has found that outdoor air pollution and diesel fumes both have been shown to cause lung cancer.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here it's not only that there is air pollution, but it's also specific to different types of air pollutant, right? There's like sulfur oxide is very toxic, and fine particulate matter is also very toxic. So it also depends what type of air pollution we have, right? So from the perspective of a campaigner, Jenny, what are you calling on for when you first make people aware, you get public awareness about such a problem, but then what are you asking for? Is it emission to stick to those emission levels or pollution levels that are actually existing, or is it specific other strategies to reduce air pollution?
Well, it's a mixture of everything, isn't it? I think you do need the targets, you need high standards for the air we breathe, for the sources, for vehicle standards, but then we need, really strong action from governments at local level, city level, national level, all those levels.
Yeah.
It's usually a mix of measures that we need. It's sort of, certainly with traffic being the biggest problem and diesel some of the worst, although there are other sources. It's a mix of cleaner cars, but also fewer cars in our case, and there are sort of different tools that you can use. Planning plays a huge role. Where we locate our schools and hospitals, there shouldn't be near bad air pollution areas. How we design our cities to reduce the need for people to have to travel unnecessarily by having key amenities and work opportunities nearby, investing in the alternatives, all that sort of thing. But you also need things like clean air zones or low emission zones and pay-as-you-go driving. All of those sort of things can help either ban traffic completely or certain types of traffic. So it's a mix of things. Government needs to help people as well with the way the tax structure is, rapid schemes, all those sort of things. You also need warnings when air pollution hits a particularly bad episode. People need to be warned properly, and emergency traffic restrictions then, even more severe. So it's a good mixture of stuff we need.
Okay. I'm just curious. Is Dario still here? Dario, are you with us? Because I don't see you.
Yes, I am here. I don't know what is going on with my camera, but you can have my audio on the time being.
Okay, but that's great because we hear you well, so that's pretty fine.
And I
was interested. Okay, that's great. Because I was interested in one thing. If you listeners and viewers want to look up the Facebook page of the Low Carbon City Forum, you will see that we did a tactical urbanism intervention to raise awareness about air pollution in Medellin, because in Medellin we have such a case where the WHO standards are quite often exceeded, and the problem has been accelerating in the recent years. So what we did as the Low Carbon City Forum is that we put out air pollution masks on a sculpture park of Moderator, and thereby created a lot of social media attention and attention with specific stakeholders for the problem. But also from my experience, you don't talk about, and as soon as you start talking about it, then it becomes a large issue and a very, very serious problem. So it's something that the political decision makers very often do not want to touch, or then touch when it's, so to say, almost too late. So I would be curious if you share that insights, or what your experiences are with this. Maybe we can. Yeah, Jenny. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. In terms of tactics, it's a mix of things. We need to have media attention. You need to have public action. You need to involve people, make them understand why it's a problem. You know, people can go and monitor their local area, and that makes it really become real. So it is the sort of classic campaigning tactics are needed.
Maybe Dario, what is your experience? Because I think WRI is working a lot with policy making. How can we create the and also follow up on the legal and institutional frameworks to deal with climate change, to deal with air pollution? Sorry.
Well, air pollution usually only becomes an issue in the local policy when it reaches critical stages, as was the case in Medellin, as you reported, or was the case of Mexico City 20 years ago, or is the case of Delhi right now. And then the authorities are to try to put things together to make things better. Emergency measures like stopping the circulation of cars and motorcycles, banning circulation in some parts of the city. But these are very short-term measures, and what cities need is a continuous effort on reduction of both the fixed sources and the mobile sources. And what Medellin has been facing is an amazing city. It's a city that is receiving international awards like the Lee Kuan Yew Award, but at the same time is building more roads, and the number of motorcycles are increasing there. So rather than these short-term measures, emergency measures, what Medellin and many other cities around the world need is a longer-term policy. Unfortunately, it is only a trigger when quality emergencies happen.
Okay. Kristie, what are you... Sorry, Jenny?
I would absolutely echo what has been said about the road building in the UK. Again, airport expansion, road building. You know, we just can't afford to add to the problem. When you're over limits and people are dying, you just can't afford to add to the problem. I think that's really important, and sometimes legal action has to be taken to force action.
Yes, there was this kind of legal action in Delhi. Some years ago, the Supreme Court banned the use of diesel in buses and rickshaws, and that helped a lot in the very short term. And this is when legal action is very effective. I agree that sometimes you really need to go that way.
Okay, but then to get the policymakers or the executive branch to create that sort of legal different legal framework, you need public pressure or public awareness, right?
Yeah. So I can maybe speak to that
Yes.
and give an example from Bangladesh.
Okay, please.
So one of the programs that our local partner in Bangladesh, who's called Work for a Better Bangladesh, a number of years ago, the government in Dhaka wanted to ban the bicycle rickshaw on a number of the main roads. And so the bicycle rickshaw is actually the primary mode of transportation for, I think it's of 35% of the city takes the bicycle rickshaw. Only 5% of all trips are taken by motor vehicle in Dhaka. But the government was saying that the bicycle rickshaw was causing congestion and that they need to be banned. Now, our local partner knew that it was actually the cars that were causing the congestion, and the cars were what needed to be banned off the road. And so they started a campaign where they were trying to basically save the bicycle rickshaw. And a huge component of that campaign was starting to change the way the media was talking about the issue. Because up until the point, so when the government made the announcement that they wanted to ban the rickshaw, the media was actually very much on board with that. They said, yes, the rickshaws are in the way of the cars, we need to get rid of the rickshaw. And so it was a concerted effort by our local partner to continually educate the journalists and the media, so that I think it was 6 years, it took a long time, 6 years later, if you read the newspapers in Dhaka, they will say the cars are causing the congestion and we need to deal with the cars. And so the media has such an important role in how the public views an issue. And so in order to make that change, and they were actually successful in stopping the ban, not entirely, but they were able to stop it in some roads. And so making sure that the media is actually articulating the messages in a way that really does explain what's going on to the community is really, really important.
Okay. Is there something you want to add to that, Dario?
Well, the difficulty is that when these actions become piecemeal, to do a real air quality improvement, you need a plan and you need to follow up the plan. And that was the case of Mexico City, which was really, really poor air quality 20 years ago. And with the support of Nobel Prize Mario Molina and grassroots organization and environmental groups, the city put together, with the support of national government, a lot of policies that help reduce air pollution, from car restrictions to including better conditions in the cars, relocating industries, reducing the sulfur content in diesel, and those things help a lot Mexico City. Very unfortunately, when the air quality was much better, these policies relaxed, and now Mexico City is facing again some contingencies. This doesn't need just the planning, but continuous follow-up and improvement.
Yes, you showed that very nicely in a blog on the City Fix, where you really see that the PM 2.5 levels, I think it is, they go down, and then as soon as the policies get lax again, then they kind of rise again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kristie, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I do think it requires a concentrated and continued effort to ensure that the public stays on board with the changes that need to be made. And so, you know, we as our local organizations, our advocacy organizations, and so their intention is to try and change policy. But you can't have good policy without the public being on board, because what will happen is people will start to complain, and then the policies will end up getting reversed. And so that's what we've been finding in a number of our cities. I'm even seeing it in the city of Toronto. There's a new climate change plan that got leaked from our provincial government, and everyone is all in an uproar because the message that's come out is that your heating bill is going to cost you $3,000 more a year. That's the message that the media has decided to pick up on, and I can pretty much guarantee that that new climate change plan is going to get scrapped, and we're not actually going to achieve the targets that we need to, because the public isn't going to be on board. And so you need the policy level change, but you also need the public to be supporting those changes. And sometimes that does mean taking something and making it smaller. So you can have a huge climate or an air quality action plan, but people relate to what's happening within their own neighborhood and within their own community often, and so you really need to sometimes break it down.
Okay. Is there this sort of long-term engagement with the community? You know, how can you, as a campaigner, how can you safeguard basically that you don't have to instigate that campaign all the time? You know, how can you create like a lasting awareness for these topics within communities? You know, that it kind of becomes a sustainable issue about unsustainable conditions, of course.
Well, yes, that is absolutely the ideal, isn't it? And that certainly takes some work, but it's a question of using the media, but as you say, getting local groups to understand why locally it's a problem for their children. You know, talk to parent teacher groups, look at how people get to school, so the next generation picks up the issue and the message as well. But you know, these things do take a while to get into the wider consciousness and then onto the political agenda. But it certainly takes some work, as we've all heard. It's largely being invisible. It makes it harder. But on the other hand, it's an easier message to grasp for some people than climate change, because it's happening now. It's affecting our health right now, and yet the measures are largely the same, apart from diesel and biomass, which have issues. But you know, largely we can tackle both together, and yet it's much more immediate. There's a bigger fix as well in terms of legislation.
Yeah, that comes back to the point what I made before, that we found, first of all, much of our team is directly affected by bad air quality. In Vienna, where I live, we just occasionally exceed WHO levels, but then we just decide to pay the fines to the European Union. But I think it's just much more pronounced, the problem in certain other cities. I know from my experience from Beijing that it's not a problem what only affects you after a few weeks. You know, like the last 2-3 times I visited Beijing, you are there, you cycle in the city for 1 week, for 2 weeks, and then you are immediately developing a bronchitis. So it's something what you really instantly feel, and everybody who experiences really heavy air pollution has experienced that already. We were talking about the costs when, Kristie, when you said that the new clean energy or climate protection plan of the city of Toronto, because it involves also, I think, a shift from dirty to clean energy, I suppose, so that people expect that it will cost them more. So when we talk about cost, you know, that the nice thing about cost is a lot of people understand it, and a lot of people can somewhat use it as a measure, you know, and also different sectors can use it as a measure to compare specific effects of for example, air pollution. You have air pollution causing all these premature deaths, and then you can. I'm myself not an expert on this, but you can always correct me if I state something not very clearly. So you can use these premature deaths to calculate like a loss in societal revenue or in a lost productivity for once, but then you can also add up all these healthcare costs and basically all the bad effects that are created by a problem such as air pollution. Am I right with this? So, and this is all what we call like the external costs, right, of an environmental problem. So the issue that we at this point have is that we don't internalize these external costs, right? That, for example, if you internalized these external costs into driving a car, for example, then people would be, if they, for every kilometer what they ride, that they put like a small fraction of the money they spend on that kilometer will be put into a fund which is actually then dealing with people who are affected by air pollution. That would be like an internalized version of these external costs. So is there something, also, because it could go well hand in hand with something like a carbon tax, that you say like, okay, you can drive a car, you can drive your SUV, which has very high emissions on NOx, and is like in general more polluting than like a small electric car or whatever, but then you also have to pay, at least you have to pay for it. What do you think about an approach like this? I think yeah, Jenny, sorry.
Sorry, I agree. I mean, that's what some of those low emission zones or pay as you go, they can all differentiate between cleaner vehicles, as well as different times of day that you don't want people to drive. So I think all those are really important, as you say, to try and not have those costs being out to society. And the actual cost of the health service is just one part of it, because there's also productivity. If people are off sick with asthma attacks, whatever it may be, they're costing business their productivity levels. And also business wants to have an attractive, healthy city to locate in. I mean, who wants to live and work in Beijing at the moment? I'd love to go there, but I'd be rather reluctant at the moment. So it actually makes good business sense to have clean air. There's also congestion. If you reduce traffic, congestion is also cut, and congestion is one of the biggest problems that business can have.
Dario, what's your take on these economic approaches to solving that problem?
I think they are definitive. Things like parking management, congestion charging, fuel surcharge, that also have some other impacts, not just on air quality, but they have impacts on mobility. Congestion is charged, less vehicles are on the road, and less emissions are mobility. Of course, we couple these demand management measures with better supply of sustainable transport modes like public transport. Demand management measures that are economic, because if you just do what many cities in Latin America are doing, that they just ban circulation of vehicles. In Bogota, we call it Ticuitaca, that's the plate number. This is very short, and some years later, people buy a second car, so at the end, it's not a definitive measure. But the economic measures like congestion charging in London or Singapore or China that are high, those are really a structural modification in the way we use transportation and help in air quality, but also mobility.
Okay. Is there, Dario, you talked about that it needs a specific plan also for municipalities to deal with air quality, or to deal with air pollution to create better air quality. In Bogota, there is this plan 2010 to 2020 in the Clean Air Plan, I think it's called. What are the strategies that are laid out in this plan? And what of them could be effective for other places as well?
These plans involve multiple actions. First, on the fixed sources, relocating fixed sources to other areas. Be very careful with the stacks and how much industries emit to the air. That's kind of the first thing that is done. but also in transportation. One of the best strategies to reduce particulate matter that is so harmful is reducing sulfur content in diesel. In the case of Bogota, there was really, really poor quality diesel 10 years ago. It was up to 3,000 parts per million, which is really dirty. Right now, Bogota is in 50 parts per million, and it still needs to go to ultra low sulfur that is only 5 parts per million. That requires the help of the petrol company, in the government, in the national government, because it's not just an action of the city. But this reduction in sulfur content has been one of the most important contributions to reduction in particulate matter, but also the plate restrictions coupled with some surcharges on fuel have helped, and the improvement, of course, of the public transportation system. At the beginning of the decade, it was a huge improvement with BRT. Now we need to redo it again.
So all these measures, they are pretty top-down and how to say, like large scale measures, right? They don't seem like community-led initiatives. They really need political will and political leadership to get it through.
But many times this political leadership will never happen if there's no groups, scientists, universities, the community pushing for them. The reduction in sulfur was the case, was a result of many parties coming together and pushing for the reduction in sulfur.
Okay, maybe Jenny, do you have? Can you give us maybe a brief wrap up or some examples of the concrete actions that you want to see from the London administration or from London's government? Because you said in the beginning that London's air quality is so bad that you kind of need-oriented decided to become an air quality campaigner to focus on that.
That's right. Well, it is. There's currently a low emission zone, but it doesn't include cars. There's a planned ultra low emission zone which needs to be bigger. We need to not expand airports. We need to not build new roads. We need to have emergency restrictions. We need to, probably pedestrianize areas. All sorts of things. I think it is a mixture of things, and people have to see the benefits. So there needs to be a good investment in the alternatives, so people have a choice, and it's easy for them to do the right thing.
We talked so much about these top-down measures. Maybe Kristie, is it? Do you have ideas for also how the community in itself can start to maybe take the right decisions or right choices to reduce certain trips, to basically live with the awareness about air pollution and air quality?
Well, it does depend a little bit on how you define community. So if you think of civil society as being representatives of community, there's lots of things that civil society can do to bring community members on board. And as a Livable Cities program, we're focused on how the cities are built to support things like healthy transportation, parks, public spaces, and so some of the work that our groups have been doing locally have been things like trying to expand the public space network. So public spaces are good for air quality, and that trees do capture CO2, and so working with local groups to help create those networks of public spaces that are important for children's development, et cetera, but are also good for air quality. At the local level, I think it's a lot more challenging trying to get individuals to so if I think about Toronto as an example, when the media came out and said it's going to cost you $3,000 or more a year to heat your house, that's not an accurate headline, but that's what people grabbed onto, and they said, no, we're not going to be prepared to spend that. And there is an element of the tragedy of the commons that comes to that. And so something that we all might have to contribute to is going to be a lot harder. And that's where you get into the situation that Dario was talking about, where you really do need then those policies in the top down. And so on a neighborhood level, I think it's much easier to get people to understand sidewalks. It's much easier to get people to understand things like bicycle routes and having access to public transit within their neighborhood. It's a lot harder to get entire individuals to start to push for things that are happening more at a city or even a national level. And so the more you can bring it down to the neighborhood level, that's how I think you impact individuals. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. We talked before about that you have to work with the media, to get the awareness, and you have to create you have to battle all these polluting headlines, to create basically air quality headlines or something. What would be some of these very strong messages that we can use? Maybe we start with you, Jenny, as a very experienced campaigner. What are some of the very strong messages or headlines that we can use to create awareness for air quality and air pollution?
Well, I mean, everything from it's a matter of life and death, or it's about your health, or all those sort of messages. I think we've got to talk about health. That's the easiest way to make it relevant for people, and talk about the next generation, talk about children, talk about the vision, the advantage, how it could be a better city, a more livable city if we actually tackle air pollution and tackle traffic. So I think you've got to be positive, but also concentrate on some of the immediate impacts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dario, what do you know any messages or facts that people are afraid of, so that they start to act? When you talk about political decision makers, for example, what do we have to tell them, to get them moving?
Well, the health statistics, especially the ones that deal in terms of poorer quality with children. Given that poorer quality causes respiratory disease, hospitals usually have really good records and are published, and they make these records public. If you are able to come to the media and show all the time what is the condition because of respiratory disease syndrome, and you relate that with the location of the most polluted areas in the city, it's very easy to make the connection. And the media likes and it's very good at telling personal stories, showing the graphs that personally, as an engineer, I like to, but these personal stories are much more powerful than all these statistics and graphs and maps that we engineers and planners like to use. These are things that really the people action and get the awareness for the decisions, the tough decisions that they need to make. Because making those decisions is usually against the mainstream. The mainstream is to have more cars, have more industries, have many things that are harmful to the environment, not necessarily good.
Okay. Although one might question how can the mainstream not be wanting to have clean air, right? I mean, how on earth is that not a common goal for us?
The thing is that usually in most places the air quality in the normal days is good, but we don't see. Sometimes this pollution is not that visible. When you talk about particulate matter, it is, but when it is ozone or other pollutants, it's not that visible. And it's only when the alarms go off that the people realize that the things are really bad. And given that is the sum of so many individual vehicles and motorcycles emitting, the personal perception that a single individual is contributing to the problem is not there yet. They start saying it's other, it's the trucks, it's the buses, it's someone else, not everybody that is part of this very complex problem.
Yeah.
Mm. So is there something you want to add to Kristie or Jenny to this to the kind of how can we make people feel responsible?
Well, I think Dario is exactly right, that there is often a disconnect between me wanting and believing that something is important. So I believe that air quality is important. I believe that climate change is important. And the personal actions that need to be taken in order to do that. And so, and this is when you start to look at sort of health theory, if you will, in terms of how you get people to change their behavior and do the things that you want. An awareness of the issue is important, but at the end of the day, it is actually going to be those environmental supports that create the communities that enable you to make the right choice. So not creating the right choice and making it really, really hard. So an example would be, if it's easier for me, so if I know that there's a poor air quality day outside and that my child suffers asthma, I might hear that and say, well, I better make sure I drive my child to school because it's a bad air day and I don't want them to have to breathe in all of the, right? And so that could be the message that you get. And so if you can create then the environment in which people can walk and cycle and take public transit easily, if you can create those environments where people can walk to parks, they don't have to drive everywhere, that's, I think, going to ultimately make the difference. And then once you do that, then you can create those almost, I don't want to call them punitive policies, but in health we talk about making the easy choice or the best choice and the healthy choice the easy choice, and making the choice that we don't want hard. So in tobacco, we don't want people to smoke, so we charge for it. We have lots of high taxes, and they've been able to demonstrate the #1 thing to prevent kids from smoking is the cost of cigarettes. And so it would be the same with driving. I think London's congestion charge is an example where it has actually reduced driving in the city center, and I think there has been an air quality improvement, and Jenny probably can talk about that better than I can.
Okay, you want to answer to that, Jenny?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. It is carrots and sticks, isn't it? And I think I was trying to say earlier, yes, the good choice has to be the easy choice, whether that's how easy, the affordability, the reliability of the alternatives. You know, we don't have to convince everybody morally to do the right thing. We just have to get them to do the right thing. So it is as ever a mix of things.
So it's also about creating urban conditions or cities that are irresistible to do the right thing. But first of all, we need to measure. You know, we need to basically show how bad the situation is, because for citizens, I mean, we can paint bike lanes, we can, you know, maybe create guerrilla street signage or something. But when it comes to really large interventions or construction projects and urban infrastructure, we kind of need our administration, our decision makers to just do the right thing. So one thing that I would like to ask you, because in the first half of the hangout, Jenny, you were saying something that people can measure the bad air quality also in their communities. Is that something, because we are also, like this year, there will be a lot of international urban policy frameworks set into motion, specifically the Habitat 3. So is there a role for civil society to monitor the problem and to go in as a stakeholder and say, look, this is really a problem, and there's no debating about it because that's what's measured and that is a fact. How does that happen?
Well, Absolutely, it is a really important part. It can mobilise a community. It can get them to understand what the problem is, how they need to act together. It can change their own behaviour. So there are different ways to monitor. There's some ways that are tried and tested, like for nitrogen dioxide. There's little tubes you can attach to lampposts, and they stay up for a month, and then that relates quite closely in the UK to what local authorities are measuring. But now, we're on the cusp of some really exciting, innovative, sort of mobile monitoring, so people can actually take a journey and see which part of the journey is the most worse for them for actually exposure to air pollution. So, they realise that they get down a side street, it's much better if they walk, and then they get on the bus, and actually it can be bad on the bus, or if they're in a taxi, or if they're in a car. And it's not just exactly as one would imagine. So all of those things are important, but also apps that help you show, where are the best routes to go. So you combine that with sort of showing how you can best avoid air pollution. All of this, I think, the modern technology is really going to change everything in the near future. But I think power, knowledge is power, and citizen power and citizen science are really important.
From the side of an NGO that is dealing with urban health, is there strategies like that to empower people with the right tools to do this? Kristie?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
I was just going to say, that's what our Friends of the Earth in the UK is. That's the campaign we're doing. We particularly want to work with local communities around the country, help them monitor, all sorts of things, working directly with local people. So that is what is needed, I think, in probably elsewhere as well.
Okay. Dario, is that from the side of the policy making or urban governance? Would that create a situation where decision makers have to deal with the situation, basically?
Yes. Normally, in these big cities, mega cities in the world, where the situation has started to be solved, even in very critical places like Delhi or Beijing or Santiago in Chile, it's the realization that the livability of the city depends heavily on air quality. It's not just the people dying; it's also the attractiveness of a city as a destination. And when these two things are put together, policies that are well known, it's not that we don't know what to do. We now know what is required to improve air quality in many cities around the world. The action can happen, but it's also good when these actions go coupled with other things that go beyond air quality. For instance, for air quality, many times could be enough with really dealing with the vehicle fleet. Now the technology is there that the vehicle fleet can be as clean as possible. For instance, the European standards have been making this possible so far. But when you couple the air quality policies with other policies for improving mobility, is when more things may happen. And if you also couple air quality with climate change and with health, many things can happen. This is, for instance, what many cycling activists have been doing around. Also, vehicles are improvement in the city, not just mobility, air quality, health, all these things together. So that's when these decision makers get awareness of what needs to be done and start taking action. And we see improvements. For instance, in my city, there has been a huge improvement over time in terms of air quality, but we're not there yet. We're not complying even with the World Health Organization basic standards. So we need to push for more.
Okay, so we almost come to a close now, and I would like to make one final round because at the Low Carbon City Forum you know, we are a citizen-led initiative that is very much driven by the authentic want of all of us to create better cities for all people and to build the change ourselves. So what would you say from your perspectives? What would you tell somebody who wants to engage in the subject of air quality, air pollution, creating better climate as such in a city? How would those people be able to effectively start with the work? I think we can make the same around again, like in the beginning. So London, Toronto, and then Bogota. So what would you tell a young wannabe activist, young wannabe air quality activist, Jenny? So how can these people start?
Well, I would definitely suggest they get in touch with local groups campaigning on the issue, or if there aren't any, get in touch with the national organisations and help set up a group, work with their parents, school, teacher groups, or anything like that, and just get involved, learn about the issue, get involved, do some monitoring, and yeah, spread the word, get some local media involved as well, tell your story, get on Twitter as well, and that sort of thing. So yeah, just get out there and help make a difference.
Okay. So Kristie, what's your take on this?
Well, I think my take is actually similar to Jenny's, and when you said it, the very first thing that popped into my mind was make friends. And so I think it's important to find a group of people that share a similar passion as you and start there. But I also think that group also needs to make friends with other groups that maybe don't have the specific slant that you do, but there is power in a common message spoken by many people. And so with air quality, many of the solutions are creating walkable, cyclable communities, and that has an impact on injury prevention, it has an impact on health, it has an impact on a whole host of things, and together somebody might actually have the issue that a government official cares about, or that the community, that particular community cares about. So making as many friends as possible, I think, is key to actually being able to deliver on change.
Okay, thank you very much. Dario?
And that's what we're doing through this low carbon forum, creating many friends, creating this opportunity of connecting with many other people that share this interest in more livable, more wonderful cities that we need, not just for ourselves, but for the next generations. And one thing that works really well is getting the data. If you're just claiming things without evidence, it's much more difficult. Well, I work in a research organization, the World Resources Institute, and we try to do everything based on evidence. So getting data that helps tell the story and in the with good evidence helps a lot. Outreach to the media, not just among a close thing, try to reach to the mass media and show the data, and the mass media get interested. We got here in Colombia very recently published good stories with really good data that also help in getting the awareness where it needs to be. It's in the political process and the definitions that the government needs to make to improve cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also one story I can share with you for ending this. It's sometimes really small things to create awareness about this. I was just a few weeks ago, I was cycling with a breathing mask in Vienna, and everybody was looking at me as if I would be totally crazy. And if you would do that on a day where you really have an air pollution problem, I think it's very easy to make new friends, unexpected friends, and create also the more awareness for it. So thank you very much for all of you. Is there any final remarks? What you want to tell? Some quick ideas or something? Or I think we have conversed a good deal about air quality, and I hope that all our listeners and viewers get inspired and just discuss with your friends, with your families, with your colleagues, with your peers about the issue. It's really something that's inherent in a lot of places, and it's something where each one of us can do something each day, actually, of us being around in cities. So thank you very much for joining this hangout, for hanging out with us on the topic of the breathable city. We will have many more hangouts coming up with the Low Carbon City Forum on the LCCF TV, so follow the hashtag LCCF TV and follow our social media channels on Facebook and Twitter. And you will also find the documentation of this hangout on our website, www.lowcarbon.city. And yeah, thanks to our guests, and see you next time when we hang out. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.